The cost of IT in business can be staggering. From hardware and software expenses to services like internet and phone, you don't need to spend a fortune on IT to succeed. If your organization spends more than $500 monthly on any service, or you're considering signing a long-term contract, IT Enabled can help you manage your technology and minimize your costs. Contact us today to schedule a free consultation. IT Enabled, we're here to help.
Well, welcome, Sharon. Glad to have you on the podcast.
Yes, glad to be here.
Yeah. Why don't you tell us about the coalition and how long you've been with the organization?
I am approaching my 8th year
Wow.
with the coalition. Yes, doesn't seem like it's been that long. But 6 years, I've been executive director.
Okay.
And the coalition was formed in 1988 by the 6 area school superintendents and the district attorney at that time, which was Clyde Harrington.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted an organization that could unify the movement around youth saying no to substances. You know, back then it was just say no and the DARE program. And they wanted one organization that could really kind of bring all of that together.
Okay.
And so that's where we started. And we have evolved from there. We're in our 35th year anniversary this year.
That's hard to believe.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, 35 years. And so, like other organizations, we've evolved over time and filled in gaps where they were needed in the community. But our mission of preventing substance abuse has stayed the same. And specifically for, underage drinking, underage use. That's really what we focus on.
That's awesome. How can you tell the difference that you're making in the community?
Sometimes it's hard.
Yeah.
Because what we do at the coalition, we do what's called environmental change. So we try to focus on a population level change. Mm-hmm. And so that's hard to see.
Yeah.
So, one example would be, we try to influence policy. We try to influence laws, ordinances. And, one of those, probably a prime example and what people most know us for is the Smoke-Free Lufkin ordinance. Mm-hmm. Our youth and board members worked behind the scenes with the Smoke-Free Lufkin committee to try and help that ordinance get passed. Well, that's an ordinance that protects our entire city, population level, from the dangers of secondhand smoke. But the effects of that won't be seen for many, many years down the road.
Right.
Because it's not something that, just, you pass it and already, oh, wow, we don't have any cancer deaths from secondhand smoke. Mm-hmm. That's not how it works. Yeah. It's way down the line. So the work that we do is incremental, very small baby steps. And sometimes there's some steps back, but we keep pushing forward.
It's an interesting concept when you zoom out on it and look at it from that way, because I've never had to take my kids to a restaurant and been asked if we wanted to be in a smoking or non-smoking section, right?
Yeah.
But that was a thing, right?
Yes,
I mean, there wasn't really any divide. Just once, the whole place was basically a smoking section. There was
to get to the non-smoking, you had to walk through.
You just had to walk through the smoke.
Right.
Always.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting. So I have 2 young kids that are both under 10, and they've always known a world where that didn't exist, that you really couldn't. So now it's almost like an outlier. Like if we have to go somewhere where there is smoke, or so it's interesting though when you take a step back and look at it.
Yeah.
But the world kind of has changed on things. So how is that going for you guys as you start to see the world change and evolve? And, when you talk about, different substances perhaps even becoming legal, right, in certain areas. So how have things changed as you've kind of gone through the years?
Well, there's kind of 2 things that we look at in that. One is that our society as a whole is very accepting of a substance that is dangerous for youth, and that is alcohol.
Interesting.
Alcohol is addictive. Mm-hmm. It can cause harm to the body when not ingested properly or ingested in large amounts. And we know specifically that youth are susceptible to problems when it comes to alcohol use. But we're in a society where, alcohol use is, it's very much an everyday and acceptable social norm. Mm-hmm. And for adults that are responsible and can handle that, then yeah, that's great. But at the same time, sometimes we send a message when we have, alcohol companies sponsoring youth events,
Right.
or events where youth are. When every event has alcohol at it, it sometimes sends a message to kids or to youth that you can't have fun without alcohol. And so that's one of the kind of social norms that we fight against. And we try to make sure that youth understand that you don't have to have alcohol to have a good time. And we want our city and county to be sponsoring and having events that are family friendly, that don't necessarily have alcohol, or when there is alcohol present, that there are regulations and guardrails in place to keep our youth and our families safe. The other substance, when you spoke of legalization, obviously people automatically think about marijuana for that. And, there's a lot of different thoughts about that. And the one thing that I would say is that we are focused on our youth. And as states across the country legalize marijuana for adult use, that sends the message to our children, to our youth, that it's okay to use marijuana. Now, again, I'm not passing judgment on any responsible adult out there. Y'all can do whatever you want to do. My focus and my board's focus is on our youth.
Yeah.
And studies show that if youth start using marijuana, they are more apt to drop out. They lose motivation. They lose focus. And, I'm going to be controversial here, but marijuana can be addictive for youth.
100%.
And
It's the gateway drug.
It is. It absolutely is. And so that's something that, we want to make sure that our society doesn't put out the perception that marijuana, alcohol, vaping, that all of those things are okay because adults use them.
Right.
We want to make sure that our youth understand the dangers and the consequences surrounding those substances.
Very interesting.
I have to watch Annalee because she's had some of the different classes at Dunbar and things like that. And, we'll go somewhere and somebody will have a cigarette. And at the top of her lungs, she's like, somebody is smoking. And I'm like, shh.
I know. It's
yes,
interesting.
They are. And she's like, well, they shouldn't be doing that. And it's like, can you get any louder saying this? And then we get dirty looks. And I'm like, we really shouldn't be doing that.
You shouldn't.
Well, and that actually brings up a great point, Tara, is that we have totally gotten the message to our kids about smoking.
Absolutely.
Right?
Totally.
Cancer sticks. And, we have totally gotten that message out. But where the gray area is alcohol. Yeah. And now with e-cigarettes, that's a huge issue right now with our youth.
They're more dangerous than almost a cigarette.
Yes, absolutely. The problem that we see with e-cigarettes is they nearly all of them have nicotine in them. Yeah. And nicotine is one of the, if not the most addictive substances. Sure. I had a lady call me this morning and she's interested in quitting smoking. And I said, well, we've got these programs, we can help you. And, we can talk about nicotine replacement therapy. She's like, oh, I've tried it all. And it's true.
Yeah.
Folks that are addicted to nicotine, they have tried it all. Yeah. They want to quit. But here we are throwing out these vapes that look like USB drives and, fancy electronic devices. And our kids are using them, not realizing that they're becoming addicted to the substance of nicotine.
It's been interesting, so I don't worry at all about my kids smoking cigarettes, right? Now, the vape thing, that's a whole other conversation, but because for so long it's been fought so hard that, it's very, very clear science, right? Smoking is very, very terrible for you, and all the legislation that's gone through and all the, marketing rules and things that have come out of that. And I wonder often, what are we going to look back on that we're doing right now? And that we thought at some point that smoking was okay, right? As a society. Yeah. When it first came out, it was marketed as a health tool, and we thought that was okay for decades. And now it's not even something that's like on the horizon for most of us who are raising kids. And I love to ask people, what do you think that's going to be for future generations? Like, what are we doing now that we're going to look back on and be like, what were they thinking? And vaping is a lot of that, it just hasn't been around long enough for us to really, really know the true long-term effects of it. But, I ask people and I get answers like sugar, or social media use or different things like that.
Oh, for
that
sure.
decades from now, we're gonna be like, why were we ever doing that the same way that we do now for smoking?
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see how you have to keep up with the changing times and the way things change.
Well, and the
how you
way
go about it.
that my board and the way that I feel is that our organization is an organization basically based on public health. You know,
Sure.
we may not be the health district or a hospital, but we are focused on public health. And so we always want to have a public health voice at the table whenever community events are being planned, or, you know, whenever schools are making decisions about substances. We want to be that public health voice and that expertise at the table. And so that's really what we're all about.
That's so important. So I know that you have some different programs offered by the coalition, and you mentioned that an adult called you. So it's not just focused then on kids. You also work with adults.
Yeah, our funding comes from the state, primarily from state grants. And one of the grants that we have right now is for tobacco prevention and cessation. So they also would like us to help adults and youth now quit smoking and vaping. And so we do offer something that we call Project Quit. Folks can go to project-quit.org, and it gives all of the information there. They can sign up, and we offer in-person and virtual cessation classes, small group classes, where, you know, people can come together to help support each other to quit. Nicotine replacement therapy, a private Facebook group to offer support and motivation. So some different things like that. So that's a specific program that we offer. I think most people know the coalition for one of two things. One is our drug-free business partnership. We have over 200 businesses in Angelina County that are part of that. And those businesses are just, they have a drug-free policy in place, and they want to promote a drug-free, substance-free work environment. And so we help businesses with that. The other thing that probably people are most familiar with, and Tara, you are, as a former All-Star, we've got our Drug-Free All-Star program. And Drug-Free All-Stars are seniors in Angelina County that sign up to be role models, basically, for drug, alcohol, tobacco-free lives. They go through a rigorous interview process and application process, which we just finished doing, and we'll be sending out our letters this month for those that we select for that. We had a record number of 90 applications this year. I know.
How many spots?
We generally try to keep around the 60 number, just because, you know, we're a small shop, and we really can't support many more youth than that because they have a lot that they do throughout the year, and we want to make sure that we're able to support them in all of the projects that they do.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
it's a great program. It's a great program, and it's always nice to see, you know, the kids in the community doing things and volunteering, and, you know, they're out and about and they're doing education, not only to kids, but also to adults.
Yeah. They volunteer in the community. They do presentations and activities with their peers. And that's really important for, you know, especially for like middle school kids, to see high school kids that are saying, you know, I've elected to be drug, alcohol, and tobacco free, and I'm cool.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's good. It's good
Yeah.
for our kids to be able to see that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a great program. And, there's many former All-Stars out there. One of the things that we would love to eventually do is kind of do an alumni thing, you know, and really, really push out there. So many of our All-Stars have come back to Angelina County and serve in prominent positions around the county.
That's awesome.
That's great.
It's a cool change that I see in this younger generation that I didn't see in my generation or generations before that, where there is a lot more health consciousness. And I think they're thinking a lot more proactively about things like that. Like we were doing some school things, and I was looking at all the kids carrying water bottles around and just like actively drinking water. And I was like, we never drank water as kids. I was like, it wasn't we weren't as health conscious as these next generations.
They're not using the plastic water bottles.
Reusable water
they've
bottle.
got the reusable ones.
And they need the refill stations at the schools. And it's like, it's really headed in a great direction with, I'm proud of this like next generation and how they feel about a lot of those things.
For sure. And one of the things that that we have seen is that our youth, they want to have a voice.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's another area that our all-stars can plug into. They, in fact, a couple of our youth not only went and testified for the Tobacco 21 legislation, they testified and were an integral part of that at the state level.
That's great.
And then we had youth. We had one former all-star that actually went and visited with the First Lady about the vaping epidemic that we've seen and what he sees in his area. So we love to be able to give youth that voice and that opportunity. I'm a government poli-sci nerd myself. And so to be able to provide that avenue for our youth to speak out on things is really important.
It's teaching them to have a voice and that it's okay to say it. Yeah,
That's right.
That's great. So how can people help you?
Well, there's a couple of things that our business community specifically can do. One is that they can join our drug-free business partnership. As I mentioned, they just have to have a smoke-free, drug-free, alcohol-free, substance-free policy in place. It's free to join. And we have a luncheon each year. We provide educational resources. So that's a great way to get involved in the coalition. The other thing is that we are offering Worksite classes for employers that want to help their employees quit smoking or vaping, whatever that might be. And so we can send one of our staff members on site to, a location, and the employer can work with us on when's the best time, to offer those classes. Some employers choose to do it like at 4:30 and they allow the employees to come to the class for 30 minutes of work time. And then the employee stays just 30 minutes after for the rest of the class. And so the employer's given them 30 minutes of paid time and the employee is given, 30 minutes of their time. And, we know that the benefits of having employees that are not smoking, those are huge. There's monetary benefits where that's concerned, not only for healthcare, but breaks, all that kind of thing that our businesses are very well aware of. So we would love to be able to help businesses with that and help their employees. So
that's great.
Awesome. Where can people find more information about this? If they want to learn how to be involved, if they want to learn more about the coalition, where would they go? Yeah,
angelinacoalition.org. Okay. And then we are on all of the socials at the Coalition 936. So Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of those. YouTube.
You can find them all.
That's right. We got them all covered.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for being on today.
We're really happy to be able to share our message of prevention and what we're doing in the community.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Appreciate you so much for taking the time to be with us today. And thank you so much for listening to the podcast again this week. We appreciate your support. Please check this organization out. Go learn as much as you can. Get involved. If you have the capacity to be involved in that, we truly appreciate it. And I know they will as well. So thank you so much for listening to the podcast. If you want to watch the video version of this podcast, it's available on the Chamber Facebook page and on the Chamber YouTube channel. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.